Welcome everyone to another episode of Talk IES, where this time we are talking about technology solutions during the pandemic. I'm very excited to be speaking with Brian Lockwood today, who is EdTech Director at Copenhagen International School in Denmark. Hi Brian, how are you?
I'm doing great. We've got great weather here. Well, for me, it's great. It's like 23 degrees. So nice and cool temperatures. Yeah.
Well, thanks for speaking to us today and giving up your time. And so how have you been these past few months with all the craziness of the COVID-19?
I think it's actually been I don't know, maybe it's Denmark and the early reaction that the government took. But for us, I don't feel panicked. I don't feel stressed. It's also because we've had a summer break and we've been able to enjoy just being at home and relaxing and gardening and doing all those kind of things. So we're prepared for the school year coming in.
Yeah, so Denmark's had a pretty successful approach to the whole pandemic, haven't they?
Yeah, they were one of the first European countries to actually close their borders. The Prime Minister took a lot of risk to doing that, but it's because of that action, our cases are much lower, and our primary school only had to be out of school for 1 month. So
very short.
That's yeah.
And
then we're starting the school year. The goal of starting the school year this year is as normal as possible.
Wow. Yeah. And you've been almost a benchmark for other schools around the world to follow in terms of opening procedure and everything. So, well, before we get into the questions, Brian, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and some of the schools that you've worked at?
Yeah, sure. So I'm actually a third culture kid. So I grew up overseas. So I went to school in Bangladesh and India. So I have this natural habitat or natural instinct that I'd like to work in international schools. So I've been here about 4 years. I'm going into my 5th year at Copenhagen. Before that, I was in Nanjing International School. I was there for about 6 years from 2010, 2016. And before that, I was in Japan for 5 years and got to experience earthquakes and all those kind of things. I missed the big one in 2011. I missed that. Someone thought I had some foresight on that, but I missed that one. And then before that, I was in Kuwait. I was at a Fawzia Sultan International School, which is a special needs school, very small population of students. And I was there for 1 year as a K through 12 teacher. And before that, I was in the United States at a private school called Brimmer and May. Okay. All schools have been IT directors except the one in Kuwait.
Right. Okay. Well, thanks for that. So let's get into the questions here. I mean, how quickly could your international school there in Denmark adjust to online learning during the pandemic from a technology perspective?
It was very quick. And I was following the pandemic and what was happening with the Hong Kong schools, what was happening in China very closely. And I think it's part of it because I'm part of the ERCOS mail list. So I was seeing a lot of the conversations happening there. There's also a forum that I help manage called techdirector.org. And there was a lot of conversations also happening there. So I was tracking what was happening. And I kept on telling my different people in the leadership team that I think we're going to hit a lockdown with Denmark. But I was saying that in February or so, or January. But I was anticipating that it would happen maybe in April or May, and I was saying maybe, we might have to count on IB exams not being possible, all that kind of stuff. But I was actually surprised at how fast the lockdown happened. It happened in March. And I would say 3 weeks before that, I started talking to our ICT teacher, trying to plan how are we going to train people how to use Google Meet. Because what I heard from one of the schools I was really modeled a lot of our actions was Hong Kong Academy. And they use Google, basically the whole Google suite for their remote learning. And I felt that I wanted to keep it as simple as possible, use the tools that we already have. So about actually 1 week before we actually locked down, we did about a week and a half, we started doing Google Meet training. And normally when we do ICT training with teachers, no one ever shows up. That's my experience. But I would say that on the first one, yeah, everyone showed up. And we saw such a high attendance rate. We just started, instead of spacing out the training, every other day, we would do 3 trainings within the day. And so we packed in a lot of training, and we didn't know if there was going to be a lockdown. Then on a Wednesday, I don't know what day that was. It's somewhere in March. There was an inclination that, because what was happening is different schools around Denmark were being shut down because of COVID cases. And so we were like, well, this is getting more serious, but we still didn't know if it was going to happen, in a week or a month. But we did more trainings on that day. And what the advice I gave to my head of school was, we stick with the systems we have. So we don't change anything. So we use Veracross as our student information system. We use Final Site for most of our on-learning. A lot of teachers use a Google Classroom. We use Google Meet as our standard video platform. We don't use anything else. I know Zoom had a lot of capabilities and could do a lot of different things. And it was sort of like, I learned about the capabilities of what Zoom could do a bit late. I can't do all that training and then all of a sudden switch people to Zoom. It would be too much disruption. So those are the core tools. Now, something happened interesting. So Wednesday was actually sort of the last day I was at the school. The school continued for Thursday and Friday. And the reason why I wasn't there is my commute route to home is on a train that actually connects to the airport. And I felt that I was at a high risk of contacting COVID-19. And so I actually worked remotely from Thursday and Friday, and was coordinating things from home while people were at school. And I don't know if in some ways, if that actually helped sort of make it more real, because then everyone took more action or not. It's debatable of what that was. But I know that there were more trainings, more Google trainings happening Thursday and Friday with the ICT teacher. And she would do it like we had a full auditorium. So we had everyone in there and they did the training. Because I had people coming to me later on and said, I saw you had your training, but I wasn't sure that there would be a lockdown. But what happened on Wednesday night, the Prime Minister said, we're locking down. No more school, no more this. So then they had Thursday and Friday to do all their training and getting prepared. And when we went into lockdown, it was really smooth. The hard thing is, how do you pick data points to indicate that you're successful, right? And the only data point I could pick up is maybe how many tech support tickets I get in the day. And we maybe get 2 or 3 each day. So we didn't get a lot of tech support stuff. But what I would say is the team, so we have a tactical team where we have also a crisis management team. And the crisis management and tactical are not much different. The only difference is the crisis management had our nurse on board. That's the only difference. The other thing is at Copenhagen International, we're very nimble. When I was in Nanjing, I had a librarian that was half-time ICT, and I had a full-time ICT integrator for the full school. And then I had a team of like 5 technicians and network people and this and that.
Right.
In Denmark, I only have like 2 IT support people, a database person, myself, and 1 ICT teacher. I don't have integrators for middle school, high school, all that stuff. So the way I looked at it is that my tactical team were the integrators. So they were implementing the recommendations that I was making. And the messaging wasn't happening from me. It was actually happening from the head of school. So we have the head of school making the messaging, I'm making the recommendations, and we all agree on it. And then we implement.
Yeah, got it. Sounds like, speaking to other school leaders as well, that you maximize what people were familiar with already,
Yeah.
rather than trying to bring in a whole lot of new tech, which I think some schools have come undone with. Can I ask you, looking at the training and as being a key component, what successful strategies did you implement specifically for the teachers and for parents during the pandemic?
The parent one, that's a good question, because I don't know about that. I don't have an answer for that one. Because I think I relied heavily on my team,
Right.
and gave them the freedom to make those decisions. And so my principals were the ones communicating with the parents. I don't know exactly the details. They probably have those answers. And I know, like, my primary principal has talked extensively about this. The other thing we've did is we made a lot of documentation so that the parents could go to one place and get that documentation. And the principals wrote that all out, and I put them in full control of, it's sort of a very flat, Denmark's very about being a very flat organizational structure where there's a lot of trust in what we do as professionals. So it's hard for me to answer those exact questions because I had the principals taking care of it.
But also, I mean, having those principals trained and the teachers trained well, obviously then was
Yeah.
that good communication from the teachers to the parents, which
Yeah.
Communication has been clear from a number of schools that they haven't spent enough time on the teachers. So
yeah, I think the other thing is in our tactical team, we work in a Google environment all the time. And so we're very fluent and comfortable in that environment. Mm-hmm. So those people, I don't need to be next to them and telling them this is how we do things. They know exactly what to do. And so it makes my job much easier.
Sure. And what preparations will the school make in regards to technology tools or technology access going forward for what will possibly be more remote or hybrid learning scenarios in the future?
I think what I've been recommending to the school leaders is that as we have internal PD, that we focus on using the Google tools, how we can use it more effectively. And then the ideas I've had is, and this is what I've recommended to them, is instead of bringing a Google trainer to say this is how you use a tool, actually find teachers that have good examples of teaching and learning, of using those tools. And so then people have they can use those tools and understand it in an applied context. Because I have got feedback from some teachers, some parents, about some processes that teachers have took, because that's the only process they know. So then there's a point where we can see, okay, we need to show people how to use Google Docs in a much more holistic sort of point of view, because we can make when you know it, it's hard to understand what people don't know, and then it's how do you translate that so that it's a PD environment that makes sense for the teachers. Because I think with tech PD, it's when IT people give PD to on a tool set, it's sort of a list of all the things that you can do. And right. I think that overwhelms teachers. But if you can say, okay, we're going to go through a simple lesson of how we do all these different functions. One of the things, like from an IT standpoint, we did was the hard thing was within to set up the Google Classrooms or the Google Meet environments. You had to put all the student email addresses and all that. So we actually created a query within our database that the teachers could click on that, and it'll just pull up every single class they have with all their student email address blocked in together. And that's one of the part of the trainings we did, was how do you put that into your Google Calendar and schedule out all your classes so it's very simple. And I think that was a huge success. And I think that was part of the reason why we probably didn't have a lot of issues.
Right, got it.
And you asked about hybrid learning, right? Yeah. So that's been a big topic in, I know that has been on the tech director forum, because some people have been saying, how are you going to do that? Because it's so difficult. Because if you're trying to teach a class with students in the classroom and you're trying to do it online at the same time, most professional setups will have a cameraman that does that, and you can't do that for a classroom. And so there's been discussions. It's still ongoing. There's a lot of schools faced with that challenge. I'm so thankful with our school, they didn't go in that direction. I think they already had the same insight that how complex that would be, how much of an investment that you would have to put into all these sort of fancy cameras kind of things.
Yeah.
And then it would be very frustrating for teachers, I think, to sort of be doing those two audiences in one room. So what we did, sort of a hybrid sort of scenario, but what they did is, because when primary school came back into session, that was April 15th, there were still a lot of parents that did not want to send their kids to school.
Right.
So what we did is we had the normal classes and we broke up all the teachers and they focused on that. But then we had some teachers, because there were classes that were not happening because of this emergency learning scenario. So we had some learning support teachers and some other teachers that library, for example, because library, you couldn't use a library. So the librarians were freed up. And so then they were dedicated to be actually doing online classes for those students that were off campus. So we sort of divided and conquered. And I think that's a much more successful model and less stressful for the teachers.
That's good advice. Just thinking about if you were back in Nanjing in China, you would not be using Google Suites.
No. You would be using Office 365 and Google and Microsoft Teams, and I've heard it's a very good solution. So Microsoft, all these companies have sort of stepped up to the plate to make things work. Even with Google Meet, the problem was initially you couldn't have. The nice thing about Zoom is you could have that grid view and you could see every single student. But I think the crisis was happening quite quickly at that point that Google sort of got on board. Actually, there was again, through the different forums we find out there's an extension for Google Meet to grid it all out. We solved it that way. Then we had people asking, is there a way that we could make attendance, through Google Meet? We found an extension, it did that. We kept on, but sometimes we found them through forums, sometimes through teachers. So if teachers say, hey, I found this, and then I said, okay, let's just implement it. And we'd implement it, send an email out to everyone. And
would you say all the technology is really there now for good online learning to happen next semester? There's not the classroom is not missing one key piece of technology, or is there something out there that would make?
I would say that if you're looking for a key piece of technology that would be very helpful for all teachers that are at home, a good chair. Like a good chair and a good desk, because I think people were starting to feel even I did, ergonomical type of strains. And
standing. I have a standing desk now, which I didn't have 6 months.
Well, you need to have that because that's a lot of time in front of a computer, and it's very difficult. There's other would be great to have, good microphone, good earphone set, these kind of things. But even what I'm wearing here is good, but there are there were things that we had implemented a bit late. So the math teachers, we were struggling with a solution for the math teachers, but I found a good solution through Frankfurt International School. They were using iPads, and we had some iPads, and so we sent out iPads, did training, but the training we did was you can't be in person, so we would just do remote training through screen sharing and all this kind of stuff. And I don't know how well. The thing is, no math teachers come back, oh, it's been fantastic. Usually you'll hear it didn't work or it sucks, right? Or something like that. I didn't hear that. So I have to assume that it worked out for them.
No news is good news.
Yeah.
When does school start? When have you got kids back in class this new year?
I should know this. I think it's next Wednesday.
Next Wednesday. So like
Yeah.
the 12th? No.
Maybe. I can't remember. One of the things is I've been in such vacation mode that I haven't got all my, we started work on Friday, and it's sort of, you have to get out of that. And it's either Friday, it's either Wednesday or Thursday. We usually start middle of the week because it makes the first start a bit easier.
Sure, for sure. Well, I must thank you so much for your time, Brian. There's a lot of really good advice there for our audience, and all strength to you for the opening week or two, and the rest of it. So, yeah, keep well, and again, thanks so much for your time.
All right. Bye.
Okay. Bye.